All right, what's up, everyone? As you can see, we've got a loaded slate today. Big college football games happening yesterday. Big college football games happening today. We've got college football national championship that is going to get decided here between two teams that we watched play last night. But before we get started, I'll go ahead and throw it around the panel. As always, with me, I have my my co-host and Sam Daring here joining me. We've got four special guests that have some very hot takes to go off of and back up as well. But I'll toss it over to Jesse, and then we'll go around. Everybody introduce yourself.
What's up, guys? As you can see, go Bucks. I'm going to have quite a bit to say today, so just prepare yourself. I try to pride myself on not being a super fanatic and being some of these Ohio State fans that many of you guys dislike. But, today is an exception, so you're just going to have to, I guess, deal with it. You can follow me at jcrockett24. I am the director over at our MLB department for Unwrapped. So excited to be on this morning, excited to chop it up with the boys and get this thing going.
I'll just jump into it.
Go around the panel.
You got me, Trill, from the 1/4 of the MBF podcast, Nothing But Facts. This is the second or third time I've been on Saturday Standouts. It's become something regular with Caleb and Sam, and yeah, I'm just here to drop some facts and talk some shit about some football.
All right, and then I'll jump in. This is Wise Cheese. Actual name is Matt Skura. You can follow my Twitter down below at Matt_Skura, Instagram at Matt_Skura19, and check out the MCS Real Sports podcast. We got our great friend Caleb Connett been working on that. Got some new episodes uploaded. Make sure you guys check that out. And I'm excited to talk all things college football related.
And I am Garrett from Iowa, co-host of the People's XFL show. Be sure to check that out on Wednesday nights. We're coming back in the new year with a bang, and I'm ready to talk some shit. Let's go, boys.
Yes, sir. And like I was saying, we got some big games that happened yesterday that had a lot to do with how the college football playoff and how the champion's going to shape out. But before we get to that, we'll talk about some of our most exciting New Year's Six games. I know we got two more today. But we had four of those games happen already. So I'm just going to toss this around, and we'll start with you, Matt. What was one of your most exciting, New Year's Six games that we got to watch so far?
One of the most exciting New Year's Six games that I watched. I will say I did tune into the Georgia-Cincinnati game. I felt that was definitely the most intriguing game. I mean, I kind of felt bad for Cincinnati. I mean, that was a game where Cincinnati, it looked like they were going to prove something, like maybe a school outside of maybe like the Power Five could win something. But, Georgia showed in the end. And, JT Daniels showed, from Georgia saying like, hey, maybe if you would have started me earlier on in the season, maybe it could have been something. But, it was overall a great game. It was a great comeback from Georgia. It's I will say, something different besides, Georgia sports. I mean, most Georgia sports are known for blowing leads, a.k.a. the Braves blowing a 3-1 lead. They blew the national championship game a couple years ago. But, maybe the new year in 2021 will change things. But, overall, I thought it was a great game to watch. It was a great comeback by the Georgia Bulldogs. I felt more bad for Cincinnati because it felt like on that third down play, they had an opportunity, but the defense made a great play. I'm not sure which player it was, but I saw him move off of his guy to deflect the pass and make a fourth down to give Georgia a chance to come back. I thought that was great on their part. I will say for Cincinnati, I'd say, keep your heads up. I mean, I think Cincinnati proved that even though they have the tough loss of Georgia, I feel like this is going to set the stage for them for next year. And maybe Cincinnati could be one of those sleeper teams to maybe make a playoff. Maybe make a playoff next year. That's the overall takeaway that I saw from it.
I'm going to have to go with the Cincinnati game as well. That was definitely the most exciting game. The Florida-Oklahoma game was definitely a little bit of a letdown. I expected that one to be a lot closer. And Cincinnati just really came one great defensive play away from winning that game against Georgia. So it's definitely the best game to watch. And looking forward, I think we got Iowa State playing today. I think that will be a fun game to watch, and also the Texas A&M. So I'm gonna reserve judgment till the two play today as far as which one was the best, because I think Texas A&M is gonna come out with a chip on their shoulder, looking to make a statement, kind of the same way Cincinnati did. And I believe even though Cincinnati lost that game, I think right there's the proof you need that we need an 18 playoff.
Won't disagree. And I mean, I'll jump right into it with mines. I've got North Carolina, Texas A&M in today's game. I just feel like Sam Howell, he's next year's number 1 quarterback, number 2 at the very worst. I think he's a first-round pick whenever he decides to come out. Kellen Mond, I feel like he's been at Texas A&M for 6 years now. I don't know how long, but at this point, I feel like Jimbo, like you said, Texas A&M is coming out with a chip on their shoulder. They feel like they should have been that other team in the playoff last night. And I would have much rather watch Alabama play Texas A&M than that crap we watched yesterday. That's just my opinion. So that's why I'm so excited for the North Carolina Texas A&M game.
And Jesse?
Yeah, I personally hope A&M gets railed today, just so that's the last team that you guys can hold on to for that argument. But that's just my own personal preference. As Cincinnati has gone down, Coastal Carolina has gone down, Florida got smacked. So just one more left in the cap here, although last night pretty much said it all. Kind of looking forward to North Carolina putting a smackdown on A&M just to kind of end it once and for all here. But as far as most exciting, I mean, as a fan, obviously I'm going to pick Ohio State, but that Cincinnati game, I mean, it's pretty obvious so far that that's probably been the best game overall. So that'd probably be my choice if I was being non-biased, of course.
Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia, Cincinnati. I figured someone would say that. I thought Cincinnati was going to win this game just because we did see quite a flurry of opt-outs from Georgia, including Ben Cleveland, Eric Stokes, Monty Rice. And I was talking to my friend last night too. Like, there's so many like big name players that everyone expected to take this big leap, and their draft stock, in my opinion, just went down. And Richard LeCounte could have been a first-round pick, but he struggled to stay healthy all season. Cincinnati showed people why they deserve to be taken seriously. I'm still on the fence about expanding the playoff. I don't know what else there is to do, though. I just feel like expanding it isn't the answer, because I feel like you're just going to have the other two teams that aren't in it complain for the next 2 to 3 years. Desmond Ritter has had better games. He completed over 50% of his passes with 2 touchdowns. I said this early in the season, early in the year, Caleb. I said, remember the name Desmond Ritter. He's not a quarterback that should be slept on. I think if he goes into the right situation, I think he could be very productive in the NFL. So, yeah, I'm definitely taking Georgia, Cincinnati with this one.
Yeah, I feel like that's the obvious answer, is to take that game. It was really exciting to watch. Came down to, the end, and big plays needed to be made on both sides of the ball. I did not expect Georgia to go down as much as they did early on and look as terrible as they did early on. But again, they came back and they won. So good for them. And that was the most exciting game. But I'm looking forward to that matchup today that we all are, and that's A&M versus UNC. You got Jimbo Fisher, who's a great offensive-minded head coach, as well as, always has good defenses too, always has a well-balanced team, going up against, probably everybody's favorite for the Heisman next year, and Sam Howell. So it's going to be a really thrilling game to watch, and it's going to tell a lot about, depending on who wins this game, about that argument being made for who deserved to be in that last spot. Obviously, Ohio State made their statement last night, and that'll kind of jump us into our college football playoff reaction so far. So the 2 semifinal games we got to watch yesterday, one between the early game between Alabama and Notre Dame, and then the late game between Clemson and Ohio State, both kind of underwhelming in my opinion in terms of what actually happened. But before we go any further, I just want to say, like, Naji Harris is just an animal amongst men. He just does some things that I have never seen before. And when he jumped over that Notre Dame guy and just cleared him by like feet. I was just blown away. I started yelling in my room like all alone. It was just running around like, oh my god, just losing it. But yeah, just your initial thoughts on that. And did we think that these teams all deserve to be there? And if not, why? Is there any way that it can just be rectified to where we see the best two teams instead of expanding the playoff like we saw with the BCS? Or, kind of just your thoughts overall on, the college football playoff and where we're at now with it?
Well,
Garrett, you got it.
That's a lot of questions there. I really expected the Alabama Notre Dame game to be closer. I don't know why Notre Dame cannot play postseason games, but it's been proven year and year again that they can't. I mean, their best win in the recent memory is the fact that they beat Clemson this year in the regular season in overtime. They can't get to the kind of turn it up in the postseason and get there. I'm still going to die on the hill that Ohio State did not have the resume to be in the playoff. I mean, obviously, you look at what they did against Clemson last night, and they made their case. But previous to that game, they didn't have the case to get in there. I'll die on that hill. But
you died already on the hill.
Dude, they played two teams above 500, and they changed the rules just to get them 6 wins. They didn't have the resume to be in there, and I am. Every other season, I'm a flag carrier for the Big Ten all day, every day, because they get disrespected by ESPN all season. So you hit postseason. Normally, I don't care who you are. I'm carrying the flag if you're from the Big Ten. This season was not that case. Cincinnati had a better resume than they did as far as getting into the playoff. But they made their statement. They deserve to be in the championship game, but they hadn't done anything previous to that. Beat down to Clemson last night to show that they deserve to be in there.
Just let me know when I have the floor. I'll let everybody go.
Okay, so I'll go next.
I know Joe has some special feelings, so
exactly. I've got a few little feelings about this. One, I'm right with Garrett on this. I do not think Ohio State should have been there, and not for the fact of all the rules and everything, but simply I don't think they were a top 4 team this year, especially with that last game against Northwestern. Don't get me wrong, Trey Sermon, probably the best running back in the nation right now behind Naji Harris, so I won't take that away from anybody. Same thing can be said, Justin Fields, probably the best quarterback in the nation. But overall, I don't think they're a top 4 team. I think it's going to be shown in, 9 days from now, whenever January 11th is, when they come down to my city in Miami. And yeah, I think Alabama's going to rail Ohio State. Devonta Smith versus Sean Wade, Chris Olave versus Patrick Surtain. Those are the only matchups of the whole game that matter in my eyes. If the Ohio State players can win those matchups, I like them to win the game, but I don't like it. That's just how I feel.
I think of it differently. Jesse, you're going to like this. I would say OH.
Sorry, I had to unmute. So
okay, perfect. All I gotta say is they proved that they were a top 4 team. Do I like how they were 6-0 and got on the top 4? No, but everybody knew once they beat Northwestern, they were going to be in that top 4 seed, and they proved it. I mean, they put the whoop ass on Clemson. They didn't just beat Clemson; they mollywopped them and went like that to them. And Justin Fields, I will say, he played great. This was probably the best game that I saw out of Justin Fields throughout his entire career. I mean, he played great last year when they played Clemson, but I think this year, even with the motivation that they had coming off of that tough loss of last year, they proved it. I mean, obviously, we all know, Alabama, they're obviously the top-rated team in the nation. We all know they're going to play good, but for Trill to say that Bama is going to rail Ohio State, I think that's blasphemous. I think Ohio State is going to keep it closer than expected. Now, do I think Ohio State will win? I think that's debatable. I think we'll have to wait and see how Justin Fields is, to the game. Like, if he's fully healthy, I think Ohio State can keep it close, and I think they got a good chance. And one thing I will say, I hope Nick Saban took notes, because trying to stop Trey Sermon, it's going to be a tough ask. And you got to think Master Teague will probably be back for that national championship game. So Ohio State's got a good chance to win. And all I got to say is I think it's going to be a good national championship game between Ohio State and Alabama, but I also kind of want to throw in a little bit of Bama, Notre Dame. It was a terrible game. I will say Notre Dame kept it closer than I thought. I thought Notre Dame would keep it close for a quarter, and they kept it up for a half. And, I think we saw, just how powerful Alabama is. I know some people are going to say, Notre Dame shouldn't have been in top 4. You should have put an A&M or Cincinnati. But if you would have put those two teams in, that same result would have happened. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those where it's like, yeah, as much as Caleb would love his boy Jimbo to be in the top 4, I still think it would have been the same result. I still think it would have been whoever Bama would have played at number 4, they would have beaten him up real good. So overall, I thought it was a good college football playoff. I think Ohio State proved why they are a top 4 team and how they can give Alabama a run for their money in the national championship game come next Monday.
Yeah, before we get to Jesse, I know he's just itching to go and talk about his Buckeyes. But, that Alabama-Notre Dame game, you're right, Matt. Anybody you probably put in there probably gets smacked just as good as, Notre Dame did against Alabama. I, too, thought they were going to put up more points on Notre Dame than they did, but it didn't happen. It just was real boring game, in my opinion, other than that Naji Harris move that he had on that one huge run. But I don't think Notre Dame – I think Notre Dame probably deserved to be there and Clemson deserved to be there. Ohio State obviously showed they deserved to be there after what they just did to Clemson. But prior to this, I was not on that train, and I'm going to go ahead and say that right now before Jesse gets going and starts calling me out. I've been riding the wave of hating Ohio State for years and years and years, and, culminating this year that they don't belong in the college football playoff, and just because of their performances in the past, they just don't show up. But another cool statistic here is that Ryan Day is 23-1 as a head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So Ryan Day knows what he's doing with Ohio State. It's not Urban Meyer there anymore. So we'll see if that changes come the national championship. So I'm, eating crow right now. You have to when you're wrong. Ohio State deserves to be there. And I hate to say it because I hate Ohio State. And I also hated Clemson. So I didn't really care who won the game in the first place. But it would have been nice to be proven right. And Dabo just failed me in so many ways. So, back on the Dabo hate train, which I will probably never get off of. But it was an okay semifinals. I wasn't overly excited with either of the games. So I'll toss it over to Jesse so he can go ahead and get out what he needs to.
How long of a timer do I have here?
You're not on any timer.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I'm trying to kind of put the pieces together here because there's like several different arguments that have been made here. So I think we've seen through bowl season that all the teams that have claimed to have been worthy of that number 4 spot have obviously fallen short. The last piece is obviously A&M, but we saw A&M against Bama already this year. We saw how that result turned out. So I think we would – could definitively say that would probably something similar would probably happen again. And it's just infuriating to me that we still have people that are saying that they're not one of the top 4 teams after last night. I get the resume wasn't there. They changed the rules, all this stuff. Nobody else besides Bama has any good wins either. Notre Dame beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence, and you can say, oh, their backup quarterback put up stats, blah, 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 blah. It's different. They would have lost the first time against a Clemson-led team or a Lawrence-led Clemson team. So they would have had 2 losses and probably could have been argued that they shouldn't even be in. A&M, what did they do? That they beat Florida. And what other win did they have that was, super elite? They barely beat LSU and a few other teams down the stretch of the season. Yeah. I mean, so A&M doesn't exactly have a flawless record either. Cincinnati, they don't play anybody. I don't care what you want to say. They don't play any teams
and beat them all.
What?
They played 4 ranked teams and beat them all. They had more wins against ranked teams than Ohio State did and more wins.
Who did they play? Name the ranked teams.
Army is still ranked. SMU was ranked before they beat them. Memphis was ranked before they beat them.
Yep.
UCF was ranked before they beat them. Tulsa is ranked at the end of the season.
Penn State was ranked when Ohio State beat them. I mean, you could come up with they were ranked when they played them. I mean,
Ohio State 3 wins against ranked teams
for Ohio State.
Tulsa was also ranked.
Yeah. So yeah, Tulsa. Okay. So these teams would definitely
SMU.
I mean, ranked, not ranked. This whole thing is this year was crazy. First of all, so you have to kind of throw caution to the wind as far as having like a structured. Okay, this team. The resume argument to me this year doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You have a lot of teams. Well, every team. We're playing no out-of-conference competition. So these Tulsas and these UCFs and those teams of the world would have gone to higher-end teams and gotten smoked, and they wouldn't have been ranked when UC played them. So
why play a season then?
Well, we did. I'm not going to get into that debate. We played a season.
Clemson and Oklahoma in again. Why not? Let's just go Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma.
Not a single Big 12 team deserves to be a top 10 team in the country this year.
Oh, I agree, but if you aren't counting resume, then why does it matter? Oklahoma was pre-ranked. They're supposed to be good again, so let's just put them in.
I didn't necessarily say don't count resume, but I think that being the definitive argument is a little bit flawed because the college committee, right? They have all these requirements of what teams should make the college football playoff, right? Do we know any of them definitively other than the 4 best teams? So what we do know is they're supposed to put the 4 best teams in the country in the playoff every single year. That's a little bit of a subjective way to do things. But if we're just going in that qualification, can everybody on this panel agree that Clemson should have been in the playoff? Were they a top 4 team? So if you can agree to that, then you have to acknowledge that Ohio State is a top 4 team. You can say before the game started, they shouldn't be in. But to say it after the game, that's ridiculous. You can't make that argument. They showed definitively, directly, there was a direct competition. X team meets X team on this date, and they proved that they are the better team. So they are better than the number 2 team that was ranked in the country. So they are a top 2 team in the country right now. It's definitive. It's black and white. There's nothing else to debate. They went and they proved it on the field.
You think Clemson, and I guess this is going for you, Jesse, because I fully agree that Ohio State should have been. This is for the people who don't think Ohio State should have been in there. Do you think Clemson-Bama would have been more exciting than Ohio State-Alabama?
No. It's hard to say. I
think Ohio State would have been more exciting. Is going to be more exciting than Clemson-Alabama.
You may be right.
I would say more exciting as well, just because we've seen Bama and Clemson like several times, that same matchup. They're different teams, but you just want to talk about more exciting. Yeah. I mean, I think not enough is being taken into consideration that there's a reason that Ohio State was thought of as like the number 2 or 3 team preseason before COVID happened or anything else. Everybody could acknowledge, all the talking heads were saying Ohio State had a super talented roster, and they didn't exactly play, great football throughout the whole season. I'm going to acknowledge it firsthand. I was disappointed as a fan watching in several games this year. Trust me, you can ask all my friends, cousins, family members, whatever. I was literally pissed off almost every single time I watched Ohio State this year because I knew that they were more talented. But it just goes to show you that talent wins out, coaching wins out, and quarterback play wins out. All these things are super important in determining who is a good team and who is not a good team. And Ohio State checks every single box there is to be checked, except for maybe the fact that they have a few flaws on the back end of the secondary. Like everything else, they have proven that they belong. And the fact that we're still having people argue that they don't belong or they didn't belong is blasphemy to me, because we saw it firsthand. We saw it on the field. There's literally no argument that you can make that would prove you to be right.
But I mean, I prior to, the playoff and what we saw from them last night, you could easily have made an argument that Ohio State did not deserve to be in that because of the record and who they played and who they won against. And then they didn't look good in their last win in the Big Ten championship or whatever that was with Northwestern.
They only played 6 games and they still have as many top 15 wins as all these other teams. I don't understand that argument. Just because
you also have to take into account as well the type of level of play that the Big Ten has compared to, other conferences such as the SEC, for example.
Well, the SEC is by far better than everybody, but the ACC has proven that they're not,
the ACC is one of the worst conferences right now. It's just so weak. I mean, it's top heavy with, maybe Clemson, UNC, and maybe Miami, but they were just, exposed themselves and now are going to have King for more than half the season next year because of a torn ACL. So, I mean, I understand that, but at the end of the day, you look at these conferences next to each other and, there is obviously a hierarchy of this conference is better than this conference and everything. We can all understand that and look at that. So I just don't see the Big Ten didn't look all that great to me this year. It did early on with how Indiana was playing, how Wisconsin was playing. And so they had to go through all their injury stuff. And then the whole other thing with the Big Ten is like, if you had a positive COVID test or something, or weren't able to have enough players, then you missed 2 games right off the bat. I mean, we saw it happen with Indiana. So at that point, how can you even really say, yeah, Ohio, like if Ohio State did play Indiana, like, and they beat Indiana, but what's to say what that would have looked like if Indiana would have played all these games prior to that? If there was all this, built up stuff coming into a game like that, and then Ohio State like puts it on in like a 1-loss Indiana team that's been through 11 seasons, then you get a little bit of my respect. But the fact of the matter is that the Big Ten totally shat the bed, in my opinion, in terms of, the way they went about having football this year just to make sure Ohio State got in. And I think that's a huge problem. And I hope that's not the case in the future. But, I mean, I think there's a strong argument to be made that Ohio State didn't deserve to be in there just based off of prior play. Now, like I'm saying, I'm eating my words because they showed it last night that they are better than Clemson and obviously better than a lot of other teams in the nation, probably the second best team right now behind Alabama. So I think we got the 2 best teams ultimately. But did I think that it should have happened this way? No, I think it should have been a different team in there that, had a more proven track record against better opponents and against,
Who would that have been in your opinion, Caleb?
There's at least 3 teams that I could probably say, but at this point, there's no point in even saying them because, we've seen them, ultimately go through collapses, and that would be, A&M and Cincinnati. And then you could maybe if, Florida didn't lose to LSU, you could have had that conversation, even if they did lose to Bama in that SEC championship game. If Trask didn't look horrible, maybe you could talk about that. Maybe you can talk about, I don't know, who's another team. You could maybe even talk about A&M. I know they were just on the outside looking in, but like you said, losing to Alabama by how they did lose to Alabama doesn't look good for them. But I mean, there's other teams you could put in there that have a slightly better resume than say does Ohio State this season.
Ohio State was a victim of scheduling and the fact that Kevin Warren's an idiot this year, but that doesn't change the fact that they should have a free pass. And I started out my initial conversation by saying that you are correct. Like last night, they proved that they deserved to be there. They had not previous to that. I mean, put Iowa and Wisconsin on the record. Put Iowa and Wisconsin on the record because I mean, Ohio State has a history of losing big games in the Big Ten, and they didn't have to play any this year.
They played the best 2 teams in the Big Ten. What are you talking about? And they beat both the teams.
Yeah, and then they played a bunch of doormats the rest of the season.
So did every other team. Caleb just acknowledged the ACC sucked. Like every single conference except for the SEC has the claim that they played a bunch of garbage teams. Nobody had a chance to practice the way that they had practiced in the past with COVID. Like all these teams, nobody had the chance to have that, stability and everything else that they would have. There was no typical offseason. There's no typical scheduling. There's no nothing was typical about this season. Ohio State literally beat every single team that they had played. They proved last night that they were a top 4 team, and that is the only requirement that the College Football Committee puts together when they put these teams together, is to put top 4 teams in the country. That's it. There's no other requirements. So we can talk all we want, but the system's flawed. Like, we can just acknowledge that. There's a lot that they could do better. There's a lot that just transparency-wise that they could make it easier for us to debate who is more deserving, who is not. But I just can't get over the argument that they didn't do enough to get in. And I think they proved last night that they do deserve to get in. And I am not going to say definitively that they're better than Alabama or anything crazy like that, because I mean, if I'm Nick Saban, I said it last night in the chat, but if I'm Nick Saban, I'm matching up Smith against Wade every single freaking play because that guy is soft as freaking tissue paper. But I think it's just proven that Ohio State has one of the best 4 teams in the country, and I think that they will compete with Alabama. I think Alabama has flaws too. I do not think that they are flawless by any means. I think we saw a little bit of that in that Florida game. I think they can be scored on too. I think they had that game earlier in the year against Ole Miss. I mean, they can be scored on pretty easily as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I just think whoever obviously executes better and maybe wins the turnover battle is going to win. I think Ohio State can limit Naji Harris in the running game. If I'm Saban, I'm passing it to Naji Harris like 10 times out of the passing game, out of the backfield, because I don't think if you put Tough Borland or any of those slow guys on him, he's going to freaking eat them alive. So yeah, I think there are mismatches, but I do not think that we're going to see a blowout by any stretch. I think it's going to be a good game. I can't really definitively say which way I'm leaning yet, but I think we have kind of seen that these are the 2 best teams in the country, and I don't really think there's too much more to be argued.
You want to start talking about how COVID affected teams? Let's put Iowa in there because they should have been undefeated if they would have had their first 2 weeks of practice before the season started. I mean, like, you start going down that what if road, you can what if this thing to death. I mean, what if Florida would have played Pitts against LSU? Well, then they're in.
No, they're not, because Wilson would still throw the shoe.
Cincinnati went undefeated and took down a Power 5 team in non-conference play.
Cincinnati is never getting in. They're not going to let a non-Power 5 team, unless you're Notre Dame, sitting in an independent conference, in the top 4.
Yeah, and we've had that conversation, but yeah, a non-Power 5 team is never going to get in, and I think if they didn't let Cincy in this year, they're never going to let a non-Power 5 team in. That's just facts. Go ahead.
I got a little question then. So let's just say this wasn't a COVID year. Can we all agree that Notre Dame would not have been a top 4 team if they had to do their regular scheduling?
If they weren't in the ACC, or if they were still independent?
If they were still independent, how they do it with their usual 4 ACC games, then Boston College, USC, teams of that nature.
And I think Caleb talked about that a few weeks ago. I think the big reason is because the scheduling comes in, they're playing all ACC teams.
I think that only helps them get in my opinion, is being in the ACC right now. Because I think it's regular. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, and also beating Clemson when they were the number 1 seed, that in fact helped them. Even though they didn't have Trevor Lawrence at that time, I think when Notre Dame beat Clemson that first time in Notre Dame, I think that kind of shows that if they were to finish the rest of the season undefeated and still lost to Clemson, you'd still have to put them in at number 4, just because of the fact that their only loss was to Clemson.
Breaking news, guys, just while we're on here, it appears that Tom Herman is no longer going to be the head coach of the Texas Longhorns.
Really?
They fired Herman?
I think so. That's what I'm hearing.
Wow.
I can double check my sources, but yeah.
I mean, Texas is Texas. What do they think firing Herman's going to do?
Nothing. They're still going to get their ass kicked by Oklahoma.
They're still going to be like a 9-win, maybe 10-win team. I don't think they're ever going to go undefeated. They might get a Big 12 championship, but
remember when Sam Ehlinger said we're back and then they proceed to go 7-6, and then lose to Oklahoma that next year.
It's confirmed he has been canned.
Texas hasn't been the same since Mac Brown, and they probably will never be the same until they get someone of that stature.
They need to get Mac Brown back.
Exactly. I'm like, call Mac Brown back at this point.
Yeah, you gotta send an apology letter with some roses. Be like, they have to probably go emotional like this. Mac Brown, we were wrong. We need you back. We are Texas. We'll take McConaughey and you, the main staples of Texas. We need to be back. We're tired of getting our asses kicked by Oklahoma and soon to be outranked by A&M. We're fed up.
I think this might be the Texas going after Urban Meyer move.
Meyer can't coach. He has a medical condition.
I think he's done coaching.
Well, his medical condition is doing shady things when he recruits and retiring whenever he gets caught.
And then winning a national championship.
Multiple.
I don't want to fully repeat what Jesse brought up about A&M, but A&M does not have that impressive wins. The only win that looks really impressive to me is Florida. And you named all the teams that they barely beat. I watched that full LSU game, and they did not look good at all. LSU almost looked better than they did, and they still won 20-7. So if you take Ohio State out, I personally don't see any other team 5 through 10. Oklahoma was 11 before they beat Iowa State, and they moved up to 6. Oklahoma should not have been in the top 10.
No.
I think if you absolutely had to make a case for any team, if you had to pick, it would have to be A&M. I think A&M has the advantage over Florida. I think Florida went into this SEC title game, in my opinion, already out. They lost to LSU. Aggies beat them, and the Aggies already beat them earlier in the year, so the Aggies have both those advantages over them.
I want to add one thing. Since Dabo Swinney said Ohio State was ranked 11th, does that mean Clemson's ranked 12 because Ohio
I'm
State
so
beat
glad
them?
you brought this up. I was thinking of an analogy of something, and bear with me. It's going to take a little bit of time to kind of set this up, and maybe some people will understand, maybe some people won't. So Conor McGregor is one of my favorite athletes, right? So I follow the UFC pretty closely. I follow his career pretty closely. There was a fight where he won the champ status, where he took down the second belt, where he's facing off against Eddie Alvarez. And back when we had fans, I know it's hard to imagine, but they would have these huge, promo, press conferences before the fights. And that was the first fight open to New York. So the fans were going crazy. Fans were allowed at the press conference, and they opened up the questions to the fans at the end. And this guy acted like he was a reporter. He dressed up in like a suit and stuff, and he, asked Eddie Alvarez a question, who was Conor McGregor's opponent. And Eddie was saying how he, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. He always flopped, and he was, he was tired, and he just wore out late in fights, blah, 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 blah. And this guy combated everything he said. And then he asked Eddie Alvarez the question, and Eddie's like, "So, sir, what's your question?" And Conor speaks up and he goes, his question is, "Why you talking shit?" And that's exactly what I would say to Dabo Swinney if I was a Ohio State reporter last night. Why you talking shit? He just won't give it up. It's comical to see, but yeah, if I was Ryan Day in the latest coaches poll, I would be ranking them number 11 or maybe number 12.
Yeah, I think we just watched. I had no problem with Dabo's ranking going into this game, but we just watched number 11 take down number 2.
Yeah, that is.
I mean that's what happened.
I also want to throw in a last thing. Did you hear that reporter flame Lawrence on his mustache?
Yeah, what was that about?
Catch that? Oh, I don't know. I think the reporter thought she was muted, and I guess it caught on. I'm just like, damn, Lawrence took 2 L's.
There's one thing about 2020. It's the year of the hot mic.
Yeah.
2020 is the year of the hot mic, and I love it. I think she saying he needed to shave his mustache.
Yeah, he needed to shave his mustache. I'm just like, damn, Lawrence took 2 L's, one on the field and then about a flame in the stash. That is not good.
Yeah, this is also the year that we got. I would like to apologize to my employers, my family, and my community of faith, and all the people. And we have a drive to deep center, and it's a home run.
Nice. But yeah, with all that
back to the original question before the news broke. I don't think Notre Dame. I really thought that the ACC Conference Championship should have been a play-in game. So as far as Notre Dame not getting there, if they weren't in the ACC this year, I 100% agree with that. I don't think they would have, and I don't think they should have got in without beating Clemson in the championship game.
Yeah, I agree. I've mentioned that on the podcast before, saying that I don't believe Notre Dame would get in this year if they were still an independent school. I think that them being in the ACC helps them tremendously. But that being said, and all that college football playoff talk, we'll go ahead and get into our national championship predictions, guys, and also talk about some of the top players to watch while we're going through this. So maybe we should start with the players that we're kind of keeping an eye on. The 11th, right, is when the national championship is. So yep. I'll start with my co-host Sam, and kind of let him break down some of the top players that we're going to be watching, especially when it comes time to pick out whose players or their stock is rising or falling when it comes to the NFL draft, and what the national championship kind of does for you in terms of rising or falling your draft stock.
I figured this is probably going to come up, but I think the one matchup that everyone's going to be watching is Devonta Smith versus Shaun Wade, because Shaun Wade has had an up and down season. I wouldn't say his draft stock fell significantly, but I would definitely say last night he definitely rose his draft stock. I've seen him outside of the first round, which is kind of surprising, but hey, I think he could fall to the Green Bay Packers over at the 32 slot. But Shaun Wade's had an up and down season, but he plays aggressive. And his name went out there last year when he got ejected last year. I think I want to say it was for that hit on Trevor Lawrence. And Devonta Smith, I'm wondering if what if Jalen Waddle would have never got hurt? Would Devonta Smith be in the Heisman discussion? I personally like Jalen Waddle better at the NFL level, but Devonta Smith, I think, has a really good chance to shut down Shaun Wade. But on the other hand,
one second, Sam. Another development out of that breaking news: it appears that Steve Sarkeesian is set to replace Tom Herman as the coach at Texas.
Oh, wow.
Saban knows how to get his assistants jobs. Shout out Nick Saban.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah, I've never seen something that quick. But yeah, just wanted to fill you guys in on that. And continue, Sam.
No, thanks for bringing that up. I wouldn't be shocked if Devonta Smith is the first receiver off the board over Jamar Chase. There's a lot of people moving Smith up into their wide receiver rankings, perhaps even to the number 1 slot. But I think the matchup everyone's going to be watching is Devonta Smith. And some people were kind of surprised to see Devonta Smith come back for a year. Devonta Smith wasn't in the spotlight, and he still put up those impressive numbers, but he had Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs right in front of him. I think he made the smart decision. I think that was the smartest decision he could have made to come back. And now he's sitting at potentially being a top 10 pick.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry.
For me, it's literally just the flip side matchup. I've got Chris Olave versus Broward County's finest, number 1 corner in the nation, Patrick Surtain Jr. I think that's the matchup of the game. We know that Chris Olave is Justin Fields' number 1 receiver. It's pretty obvious. And Patrick Surtain is the best cover corner in the nation. Whoever wins that matchup wins the game. Don't get me wrong, the Devonta Smith, Shaun Wade matchup is important, but Alabama's got 5-star receivers all over the field. At the end of the day, you can always find someone who's going to catch you to it. Hell, I don't know if anyone noticed that tight end last night, number 19, who was 6'4", 230, returning kickoffs. So they have athletes all over the field. So don't worry about that.
Does Surtain follow guys? I haven't really paid close enough attention to that because
he's more of an island guy. He's really just going to stay on that right side, and he's good over there. The other kid is Josh Jobe, also from Miami. He's on the left side. So
yeah, Wade does that too. He only plays one side. So honestly, Sevyn Banks could be covering Smith most of the game too, and we won't really get to see Wade too much. But I personally feel like Smith has the advantage over Wade, so I think I would take advantage of that just in the way Wade plays, his technique. I think Smith can definitely thrive in those conditions. So I was just curious to see if he was going to do the same thing against Olave or how that was going to work out.
And one of the matchups I want to look at the QB matchup. 2 potential first-round picks in QBs, Mac Jones, Justin Fields. Mac Jones, obviously, in the Heisman race, him, Devonta Smith, Lawrence, and Trask. And then you got the QB who just threw 6 touchdowns and 385 yards against Clemson, and Justin Fields. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that QB matchup because I think we all know Jacksonville's going to take Lawrence at number 1. That's a fact. There's no way Jacksonville's going to take any other quarterbacks, but whoever can be the number 2.
It is Jacksonville, so I mean,
it is Jacksonville. You never know; they could somehow, some way take Zach Wilson or maybe take Jamar Chase number 1.
Adam Schefter did put a picture of Justin Fields in the Jags uniform and say, "Could it be?"
Of course he did.
All I gotta say is, if the Jags take Fields number 1, the New York Jets fans, if there are any, are gonna be ecstatic because they could still go 2-14 and still get Lawrence. But I think Jacksonville is going to be smart here and take Lawrence. But who knows? They do mess up in the draft a lot. I mean, look at their last draft picks in the last 10 years. Barely any of them are on their team. And I just want to see who's going to be the next QB besides Lawrence. If Fields has another great performance in the national championship game, does his stock, stay as a potential number 2 QB? Or if he has a bad performance, does it fall? Maybe Mac Jones, if he wins the Heisman, I believe because they announced the Heisman winner on January 4th, if he wins the Heisman, does that potentially raise his stock? I mean, a main example was Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, before he had his great college season, some people thought, this kid's going to be like a 5th or 6th round pick. He then has one of the greatest seasons ever by a quarterback, and he raises his stock all the way to number 1 overall pick. Can Mac Jones potentially, if he wins a Heisman and has a great game in the national championship game, can he potentially raise his stock up? Not really to say the number 1 overall pick, but maybe a mid-first round pick. That'll be something that we'll have to see. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that matchup. I want to see how Justin Fields plays again because we've seen QBs where, they may have one great performance and then that next game they shit the bed. I mean, can Fields keep it consistent? Because one thing's for sure, if Justin Fields has another solid performance, another 385-yard performance, 6 touchdowns against Alabama, there might be a conversation for who should be the first QB taken off the draft board. Only if Fields has another solid performance.
It's bold.
Yeah, I think
that's bold.
Go ahead, Garrett.
No, I definitely going to say the matchup to watch here is Justin Fields versus the Alabama defense. Just coming into this game, he hadn't really had a good game all year. You look at Indiana, 18 for 30, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. Went to Northwestern, 12 of 27 for 114 yards, no TDs and 2 picks. And then he goes 6 TDs and 1 pick against Clemson. So it's going to be whether or not which Justin Fields are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that throws multiple picks and gives that Alabama offense too much time on the field? Or are we going to get the one that showed up against Clemson where he comes out and balls out, throws 6 touchdowns, and makes this a game?
Yeah, I mean, there's star players all over the field in this game. I mean, we talked about Devonta Smith, Patrick Surtain, Sean Wade, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Chris Olave. I mean, Trey Sermon's back there for Ohio State too. Let's not forget about Naji Harris either for Alabama. So it's just star-studded players all around that. All of them are going to be, higher draft picks in the draft. So, I mean, I can't really point to one that I'm looking forward to the most, but it's ultimately going to come down to who I think is going to be who plays the better corner play. Like, who's going to be able to stop the other team's wide receivers? Ohio State's wide receivers are good. They're so good at getting open. That's what makes Ohio State lethal and their quarterbacks good, is that their wide receivers are always just good at getting themselves open and making it seem like they're not even covered at times. The other thing on the Alabama side is you got to deal with Devonta Smith, who is just taken off after being the number 1 guy. and ever since Waddle went down. Devonta Smith, in my opinion, is going to win the Heisman. So Sean Wade and whoever else is going to have to cover him is going to have their hands full. If that's not the case, and I think it's going to come down to the run game, which team can run the ball more effectively. And I think I would give that nod to Alabama with Naji Harris over Trey Sermon. But like you said, Trill, Master T coming back for Ohio State gives them that kind of 1-2 punch. So that'll be interesting to see too.
It's a lot. I got a question for Jesse more than anything. Will Justin Fields break the Ohio State quarterback curse?
I think he's got a good shot to. I don't really feel quarterback is so hard to evaluate, man. I've been wrong way too many times. Point in case Justin Herbert, I wasn't a huge fan of him until we saw him actually step on the NFL field, and he proved me wrong. So I don't know, man. It's tough. He's got so many good attributes, but he also misses things. He just doesn't see things sometimes, and he tries to hold on to the ball just a bit too long. And obviously in the NFL, you can't do that. You're going to take unnecessary hits. You're going to take some sacks. You're going to turn it over quite a bit. So I just feel like he needs to he has grown. He has grown, but and his deep ball, man, he is really good at throwing the deep ball. That really impressed me last night, and that's not the first time he's done that, but he does miss some easy, like he tries to push it downfield a little too much sometimes, and he misses some easy throws. There was a point in the game last night when he tried to hit Trey Sermon on like a deep wheel route almost,
and he had to check down
wide
under.
open. Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jobe just like wide open underneath. So he does miss some things, but yeah, I think he definitely has a chance to be probably the top of this class for Ohio State quarterbacks. And that's not saying much. Hell, they haven't put anybody to the next level the way they should, but he just has all the attributes. I mean, he has the size, the speed, the arm strength. He can make pretty much every throw there is to be had. It's just kind of refining some things here and there. So right now, going into the draft before the big title game, I have him like kind of neck and neck as the number 2 guy between him and Zach Wilson. That's just my personal opinion. So that's kind of how I evaluate things. But he showed out last night, and if he keeps doing that, he's going to raise his draft stock pretty tremendously. And I don't think if he shows out again against Alabama, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a lock that he's going to be the number 2 guy. Because just think about it. Once the combine starts, he starts running and stuff like that, and they see his athletic ability on top of the game film as well. Like, I don't think that they're going to be able to deny him at that number 2 spot. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know about Fields and and what he's going to do in the NFL. I think he probably is going to be one of the better Ohio State quarterbacks that have gone to the NFL. I mean, he's not going to be great in my opinion, but he'll be okay. Maybe if you put him in the right spot, he'll do better. I originally thought to Jacksonville would be a nice little spot for him to land, but now that Jackson's got the number 1 pick, I don't see that happening. I don't see, unless he does, Fields just has, some miraculous game against Alabama. And I mean, at that point, you could honestly start the conversation that do you start thinking of Justin Fields being the number 1 over Trevor Lawrence? I don't necessarily think Trevor Lawrence has improved his draft stock since his freshman season. If anything, it might have gone down a bit. Just based off of each season, he hasn't lived up or done what he did in his freshman year. So it's hard to repeat that after you win a national championship. I mean, look at what happened with, Jameis Winston. He wasn't as good as he was after his freshman year. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But with, that all those players that we were just talking about, we'll go around and kind of get everybody's prediction and on what's going to happen in the national championship game, if there's going to be a close game or if it's going to be a blowout and why, and what do you think it comes down to ultimately? So we'll start down there with you, Matt.
This is going to be bold. Ohio State wins by 10. I'm going to say 31-21.
Oh.
It'll be one of those where Ohio State's up by 3, and Jesse's going to be jumping up his couch when he sees Trey Sermon running in 10 yards for the score. Ohio State wins by 10, 31-21.
Wow.
How do you follow up that?
Exactly. I've got Bama rolling as I said before, at least a 20-point win. At
Ooh,
least.
not so respect, Trill. That's disrespectful. That's disrespectful to Ohio State.
It's just Bama. It's respecting Saban at this point. It's no disrespect to Ohio State. It's just respecting the GOAT.
I mean, slightly, because Bama didn't even beat Notre Dame by 20 points. So that is slightly disrespectful.
Yeah.
All I'll say is I'm going to hope and pray. I'm not going to make an official prediction because I haven't
Come on.
thought about it. I haven't thought about it in great detail yet. But all I'll say is, for whatever reason, Ohio State has thrived when they have been the underdog story. And we saw this a couple years back. Saban and the boys were predicted heavy favorites against an Ohio State team that was trotting out their third-string quarterback there. And they took it down 85 yards through the heart of the South. Zeke Elliott basically puts the game away. So I'm hoping that's the case. I will say, I do think one thing isn't really being mentioned enough. And I think one of the bigger aspects of this game is going to be Ohio State's defensive line and their ability to create pressure and maybe limit Naji Harris a bit. I don't think their defensive tackles get enough credit between Togiai and Haskell Garrett. I think Haskell Garrett could potentially squeak into the first round, second round discussion there in the NFL draft coming out. He's had a hell of a season, kind of surpassed all expectations. And so I think that's a pretty important aspect to this game. You know, we can talk about all these skill players all we want, but really last night it kind of came down to Ohio State controlled the trenches on both sides. You know, they were able to control the run game and they were able to create pressure on Lawrence when they were ahead and can kind of just go after the quarterback. So, you know, you can take Chase Young away and all those guys, but that interior D-line has stepped up big time and actually surpassed my expectations as well. So I think that's a pretty important aspect of this game is which team can kind of control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So that's kind of what I'll leave it with. I think it's going to be a very close game. And I'm really kind of just hoping that we get one of those all-timers again and we're on the winning side, because I don't want to have to go through what I did last year in that Clemson game again.
I'm going to have to take Bama here. Through no fault of their own, I think a lot of people think I hate Ohio State irrationally with my takes, but through no fault of their own, they haven't really had the big games outside of one, and Fields has showed up for one game. He just has not been consistent throughout the year. I think it's going to be a high score, probably Alabama like 56-42. Something along those lines. It's going to be a scoring fest, but I think Bama wins out.
Yeah, I think Bama wins. I think regardless of whether we would have had a non-COVID season, I still think Bama would have won. I think Bama's easily the stronger team. But I think if Ohio State wants to keep this from being a blowout, they need to grab the momentum right away. Because if Bama scores right away, I don't want to say it's over, but it's going to be tough for Ohio State to overcome. But I do think if Clemson was in this, outside of Nolan Smith and Darian Kendrick, almost every other defensive player on their team are underclassmen. They're freshmen and sophomores. And you look at Ohio State, almost just about all of them are upperclassmen. So they have that winning experience. They've played in the big games before. So not necessarily national championship, but they've been in this college football playoff before. And we didn't get to talk too much about Notre Dame, but I wanted to say briefly that I think they were saying when Notre Dame got crushed like 8 years ago by Bama, Brian Kelly said they learned from this situation. Clearly they didn't. But I think Bama wins. I did think it was a little blasphemous to put Justin Fields in the Heisman discussion after 3 games. I think if Trevor Lawrence doesn't get COVID, I think Trevor Lawrence is up there more. I think you could potentially have Trevor Lawrence being like the top 2 candidate, even though he is one of those guys going to New York already. But I've got Bama. I don't think Ohio State, unless they take it early, is going to end up taking the lead ever in this game. I think they could manage to keep it close, but I think they lose. I think Bama wins by at least 14.
Yeah, I'm siding with Bama in this one as well. It looks like they are opening as 7-point favorites over Ohio State, which is probably right on the money, and Vegas is probably right. Bama, in my opinion, probably wins this game by 10 points. I don't think it's going to be as big of a blowout as some other people might imagine. Like I said, I think it's a great matchup. The over/under right now is set at 76. So for anybody who's betting out there, Garrett does as well, and he's saying it's going to be high scoring. So 76 points is a lot in a national championship game. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think Alabama is just too much for Ohio State ultimately. I think Ryan Day, only has one loss on his record, but this is going to make it two. Unfortunately for him, I think he's a great coach. I like the guy. Don't like Ohio State, so I'm hoping that they absolutely get creamed. I'm not afraid to say that Ohio State is one of my least favorite teams. They're probably top 3 most hated teams for me. So I'm hoping that Ohio State just gets smashed in this game, but I'll stick safe here and take Bama to win by 10 points. I think ultimately Devonta Smith is just going to be Devonta Smith against that secondary for Ohio State, which hasn't lived up to what it has been in the past. So I think he's just going to have a field day. I mean, he just had 3 touchdowns against Notre Dame, which he's just nasty. It doesn't matter who you put on him, how many guys you put on him, he's going to get open. So I think he's going to be the game changer in this one, and just mark it down. I think Devonta Smith's winning the Heisman, and I think that he's going to be the difference maker in that national championship game. And this is going to be the last one Nick needs to surpass Bear Bryant. And so I think once he wins this one, we will see a very he might stick around for a little bit longer. If not, I think he kind of, calls it quits after he wins this next one, after he's pushed himself past Bear.
That's bold. Yeah. Quick take for gambling. Just so I like Bama to cover here, but for the record, underdogs are undefeated against the spread in the New Year's 6 and playoff games. So just keep that in mind if you're out there betting your house.
It's a nice little trend. And speaking of betting, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but we've got a ticker down at the bottom with all of our promotions that we got going with all different companies and everything. So for betting, head over to mybookie.ag. Use code USN100 for double your first deposit. So put in $50, get $50 free to play it on whatever you want to. Also, rxhemp.com. Head over there. Use code RXHemp-USN for 10% off every single one of your purchase. It's all natural CBD pain relief cream. Great stuff for if you got achy joints or, used to play sports, you got a bad back, whatever it is. And then also our newly launched shop and store with all of your Unwrapped Sports memorabilia, merchandise, apparel, whatever you're looking for. Saturday Standouts is going to be going through a revamp in terms of our logo and everything like that. So we're waiting to get our stuff out there to the store soon, but head over to teespring.com/stores/unwrapped, and you'll find all of your favorite show stuff on there, as well as just, your regular Unwrapped Sports memorabilia and apparel as well. Before we log off, I want to go ahead and, send it around the table once again. And, you guys plug any stuff that you guys got going on, whether that be with Unwrapped Sports or not. And we can start with you, Jesse.
Hey, are we going to do targeting?
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Target gate.
It was on the list. I was hot and heavy ready for this one.
Oh,
All right.
The whole chat
Target
went
gate.
off on that.
Target gate first. We'll go target gate first, and then we'll get into everybody. So Garrett brought up target gate. I'll let you lead it off.
So Justin Fields took off down the field. For anybody that didn't see it, he was running as a running back, not a quarterback. He was definitely a runner in the field of play and attempting to make a move to gain more yards, not giving himself up. Defender squared up, drilled him dead center. Because of Fields moving, it ended up being a helmet to the rib cage, and the player was called for targeting and ejected. I could see a penalty there, but they need to revamp targeting in college football altogether. That was not an ejectable offense by any means. There was no ill intent there. The guy was just trying to square up a hit. I really don't think it should have been a penalty. And you look at even college football as a whole, you could probably find a whole lot of film. But even just in this game, there was one play later on that there was a receiver in the open field, basically the exact same situation, and the safety for Clemson lined up and tackled him the exact same way that Fields got tackled, and there was no flag, nobody even talked about how it should have been targeting. It was the same thing, helmet right to the leg because the guy tried to jump instead of trying to go low like Fields did. And then there was another play when Clemson had the ball. Trevor Lawrence handed it off and faked. It was a QB option play. And he handed it off instead of running the ball, but continued the run like a good quarterback and got to the line of scrimmage and caught a helmet to the chest and just got laid out and no flag and nobody even talked about it. I mean, there were multiple hits that in that game that met the same criteria that got one of Clemson's biggest defenders ejected.
My whole thing with that hit was if Justin Fields got right up, it's not called targeting. If it wasn't Justin Fields who got hit, it's not called targeting. It's literally everything had to be perfect in that situation for it to be targeting because it wasn't even a flag initially thrown on the play. It was the fact that Justin Fields is laying there on the ground hurt and the booth said, oh, let's review this play. And, oh, it looks like it hurts. And like we brought up in the chat last night, if anyone has played football before, your head is always going to lead when you make a tackle, unless you're making an arm tackle. So I just really want to know what that player was supposed to do in that situation. Was he supposed to let Justin Fields keep falling forward? Or that's my whole question. What are you supposed to coach in that situation?
Yeah, quick question for Jesse here. Can Justin Fields break arm tackles?
Exactly.
He gets down a lot. I think they don't really have the depth behind him that they would like right now. They have too many young guys, so they like treat him with tissue or with wrap him in bubble wrap pretty much. Every game they're just hoping that he doesn't get hurt. Yeah, I think to Trill's point, he's right. I'm an Ohio State fan, and I'm still disappointed in the call. This is the exact same scenario that happened last year with Sean Wade, by the way. I'm just going to point that out. So the exact same thing. Like it was not a penalty called on the field of play last year either. And if Lawrence doesn't stay down for a few minutes and act like he's hurt last year, same thing. Like it's crazy how again, it kind of just comes back to the whole committee discussion about subjectivity versus objectivity. Like there's no objectivity in these calls that they're making with these targeting calls. And you can't, there's just no rule of the law that is, definitive throughout in every scenario. So it's just that's a terrible rule. Probably one of the worst rules in all of professional sports. Well, I guess it's not a professional sport, but all of sports in general. I just hate the rule. And we kind of talked before the stream on how I think that we should kind of have a NBA style flagrant 1, flagrant 2 style targeting calls if we're going to do that. I get that they're trying to protect these guys, but I mean, at what point are you just, tearing the product on the field out the window? And what if that's the last game that he ever plays? Joey Bosa's last game that he ever played at Ohio State, he got ejected in the first half against Notre Dame in that bowl game for a hit that he had almost no control over. It just kind of happened to where the guy was lowering his head at the same time that he was going in for the tackle. It's just, I don't know. I don't like it.
I mean, it just going back a week or two ago when Florida played Alabama in the SEC championship game, and that dude from Florida just got absolutely blindsided by the dude from Alabama, and that was a clean hit in my opinion. It was his shoulder, and he just blindsided the guy. He just got him in a great spot. In my opinion, that hit was worse than what happened to Justin Fields, even though the guy used the crown of his helmet. I understand that, but there was no cruel intentions like there was with that, Alabama guy hitting that Florida wide receiver. So, or was it Mechie who did that? Yeah, the wide receiver for Bama after it was picked. So, that was cruel intentions. This play with Justin Fields, there was no cruel intentions. He was just trying to get Justin Fields down. And it just so happened when Justin Fields is trying to spin and move his back towards the first down marker to try and get whatever extra yards he can, guy's got his head down. He's going to wrap up already. You're not going to lift your head up. I understand that driving through, you lift your head up, right? But when you first go to tackle somebody, I'm not coming at you like this. I'm not going to break my neck trying to make a tackle. So if I put my head down, Yes, at first my head is down, but then I drive up with it after I've already come into that contact. So I don't understand.
You can't even drive up when like Justin Fields was low to the ground, dude. You'd have to get really far down to be able to drive up. There's no way you could have done that.
There's absolutely no way for that guy to make that tackle without him doing what he did. You know,
Exactly.
We need coach.
We need left instead of right. It's a clean hit. So why are you penalizing the defensive guy for something he had no control over?
We need Coach Dustin here to explain his case, because I remember him going off all in the chat. I'm just like, well, I know nothing about football. I'm gonna stay out of this. I'll just throw in Coach Dustin's making his case. Overall, the call, I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, if we're being honest, that dude Fields got rocked in the ribs. I was watching, I was like, ooh, he got hit hard. I thought it was a clean hit, clean fourth down, but I'm just like, knowing because it's college and they got all these bogus rules. If the corner last year of Ohio State got ejected for Lawrence being a little bitch and laying out like, I got hit. I'm like, oh, damn, they're going to throw out the same 47 who got thrown out of the championship last year. 2 years straight, all because he made a hard hit on Fields in the ribs. And if I'm just at Fields, I mean, no lie. If that happened to me, I'm down for the count too. No cap. I ain't lying there. But it's one of those where they had to call targeting. Is it ridiculous if they call targeting? Yes. Do I like how they have targeting in college? No. I don't know why they have targeting in the first place in college. They don't have it in the NFL. I mean, why? What are we teaching people in college if you get called targeting for in the same hit in the NFL? Well, I mean, then again, it is the NFL. They throw some pussy shit calls where it's like, oh, can you imagine it? Can you imagine if Brady got hit like that, dude? That defender would be thrown out the game like it was nothing. But it's one of those where I thought the hit was clean. I mean, I threw it out in the chat last night. I said, you know what? It was a bang play, and it just so happened because it's college football and it's Justin Fields that I throw him out. And I'm glad Trill defended me on that one. He said no disagreements there. So I'm glad I got some agreement there. And just so happened, bang play, and they got to protect the quarterback. So that's why 47 got thrown out.
He wasn't a quarterback. He was a runner.
Oh, I know. He was like Lamar Jackson out there. He was like Lamar Jackson, not bad for a running back. And then he got hit in the ribs, and it's just one of those where college is doing the best to protect the quarterback, and they just called the ridiculous targeting penalty, even though he was a running back on the play. I guess that's what happens when you're a quarterback. You get a lot of protection.
I will say his targeting call last year was a lot more obvious than it was this year. I think one of you said, I think it was Caleb, you could tell there were no like cruel intentions. There was nothing he could do in that situation. And I will say too, Fields came right back in and threw a touchdown pass on that possession. So I think that shows a lot of toughness on his part.
Yeah, but that also questions me, like, he's really fine. Like, like this guy got tossed out of the game.
The boy was fine. Did you see him trying to get off the exercise bike?
Yeah, but if he's fine enough to come in and throw more touchdown passes, and ultimately ended up with,
that happens in every sport. All these NBA players, Paul Pierce dragged in the freaking locker room, and he was fine too.
Well, that's because he shit himself. But I mean, that's
so does Lamar Jackson in Cleveland.
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
It's just like, why is this guy being punished? Like, why is this guy being punished when he's clearly okay? Like, I would understand if Justin Fields was like hurt or like had some broken ribs or something, but like he was fine. He came back and threw, I think, 2 more touchdown passes after he got hit like that. So I just don't understand why this kid got punished and has to miss this whole game. And imagine if they would have won. Like, imagine if Clemson would have won that game, and now this kid has to miss the first half of the national championship game because of one hit that should have not even been called a flag, ultimately. I mean, if you were to throw a flag on it, maybe just call it unnecessary roughness, but I don't see where targeting comes into play there at all. And, like, I think it would be a much bigger deal if Clemson won this game for him to be out, but since they did not win, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal to, everybody on the outside looking in.
Caleb, all I gotta say is if Clemson would have won, Jesse would have been crying in the car. If that would have happened, he would have been like on Friday, and we all look at Jesse like he gonna cry in the car.
I was really hoping Andrew would come on and make his case that Justin Fields is better than Trevor Lawrence. Got that message in my head. When Justin Fields wins the MVP in 5 years, I'll be sitting over there with his family. You can come say I told you so.
Yeah, it would have been fun to have Andrew on here because he's, Justin Fields stand till the day he dies. But with that being said, we've talked about almost everything we can. So we'll go around and everybody go ahead and plug, all your information, all your shows, whatever else you got going on. And we'll start with you, Jesse.
Yeah, like I said to begin here, go ahead and check out our Baseball Unwrapped page. Director over there doing some fun things. Season's coming up sooner than we know it. So be here just in a couple months. Check me out on Twitter at jcrockett24. I also do a DFS football show once a week. I think we're kind of done with this season, but we'll continue that next season. I have a partner there with the Fantasy Coaches podcast. So that's pretty fun stuff. Check that out if you get a chance. Otherwise, go Bucks, beat Bama. That's about all I got to say.
Go get
right.
Go ahead.
All
Garrett.
right, Garrett from Iowa. You can follow me on that handle on Twitter, Sportscaster, and TikTok. And People's XFL show that I co-host with Midnight Moose every Wednesday, 8 Central, 9 Eastern. So check that out. XFL is coming back, and we got some fan-controlled football league stuff to talk about. So
We'll let all the guests go first.
Trill, go ahead.
All right, Matt, it's on you.
Alrighty. Well, my Twitter handle is down below at Matt_Skura. My Instagram is at Matt_Skura19. Check out my podcast that me and my great friend Caleb Conant do. We talk all things NBA and NFL related. Upload some new episodes. Make sure you guys check that out. And our podcast is available pretty much everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. And let's hope the Packers put the whoop ass on the Bears and clinch the 1 seed on Sunday.
Oh, buddy, you're lucky this is a college show. I'll let that go.
I'm MBF Trill, 1/3, 1/4 of the MBF Nothing But Facts podcast. We got our season 3 first episode tomorrow with a big guest, a newest FSU commit / transfer. Andrew Parchment is going to be on the show tomorrow. So I need everyone to check that out. Every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, I'm here talking sports. You can always find me live anywhere. Just at me. I'll always respond. And just part of the Unwrapped family.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be tuning in for that show. Parchment going to have 10 touchdowns next year for the Knowles.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Sam.
Go and give Dairy Sports a follow. I write for the Cards Wire. Go give those articles a read. I've been doing a lot of draft profiles on there. Matt and I also, we've got our Title Town show coming up this afternoon. So could definitely give that a watch over on Sportscaster.
Yeah, definitely. I want to shout out, the Unwrapped Sports Network being on Twitch now. So if you guys are on Twitch, head over there and follow Unwrapped Sports Network as well as YouTube and Facebook. Starting to branch out in terms of, all of our media, where we're at and everything like that. So head over there, shoot us a follow, show us some love there on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok as well, like Garrett from Iowa was talking about. So just trying to reach as many different people as we can. Other than that, you can follow me at CHS Knoll right there where my name is. I do a show called Tribaholics that's FSU centered around with drinking. It's real fun stuff. We're about to get that revamped and going here in 2021 as well. Saturday Standouts, obviously, with Sam. We're going to start jumping into a lot of NFL stuff right around the corner here now once the college football season ends, and we're starting to look ahead towards the NFL draft. Again, going through a revamp with Saturday Standouts. We're going to have all our merch and stuff on the shop here soon once we get that going. There's going to be another show I'm starting with one of our co-founders of the network, Perry Aston. I don't know if we've, completely launched that yet, but it's going to be happening this week. Super excited for it. So you guys can tune into that. It's going to be on Wednesday nights as well. Not the same time as Saturday Standouts, but immediately after Saturday Standouts. So looking forward to starting that with our guy, Perry. I also am all over the panels. Trying to think of what else. Unwrap These Bands. Yep. Unwrap These Bands is coming back as well. We're moving to a group effort when it comes to bands now. So you guys are going to see a bunch of different faces on there that you're not used to seeing. Obviously, Mark, myself, and Steve will still be on there whenever we can, but all of us got a lot going on. So we're looking forward to bringing that back. I think we're going to bring it back just in time for, the NFL playoffs to get underway. NBA is getting to the, heat of their season right now. The national championship game, I would love to do one for that. And, have Jesse on, have, Dustin on, all the Ohio boys, get some people that are rooting for Bama like myself on there as well. So, you guys check out Unwrap These Bands, check out Tribaholics, check out Saturday Standouts, check out all these guys' stuff as well. A great group of people we got here at the Unwrap Sports Network. And I just want to thank you guys all for coming on again today.
Anytime.